What if I told you that a broke bartender discovered a literal real-life infinite money glitch and used it to steal $1.6 million? The year is 2011. Dan Saunders is a 29-year-old bartender living in Australia. He makes minimum wage and he's totally average. And one night, he's out at a bar having a few drinks, but like all of us at some point, Dan checks his pockets and realizes he's completely out of cash. He walks to the nearest National Australian Bank at ATM to transfer $200 from his credit card to his savings account. But the ATM screen flashes red, transaction cancelled. It spits his card back out. Thinking the machine is just glitching, Dan tries something else. He tries to withdraw $200 directly from his savings. And boom, the machine spits out the money. Here's the catch. Dan's savings account was completely empty, and he literally did not have that amount of money. Because Dan's a little tipsy, he does not overthink it, and he grabs the cash, goes back to the bar, and keeps partying. But on his way home later that night, he walks past the exact same ATM and a thought creeps into his head. Can I do that again? He tries transferring another $200 and it works. He tries $500. It works. He tries $600 and also it works again. Dan empties the ATM, stuffs the cash into his pockets, and walks home, wondering if he just stumbled into a financial matrix. Over the next few days, Dan tests the machine and figures out the exact rules of the glitch. Every night between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., the National Australia Bank ATMs go offline for daily maintenance. During this 2-hour window, the ATMs are disconnected from the bank's main server, so if Dan transfers money between his accounts, the ATM creates an artificial pending balance. It gives him the cash, and as long as he does it again the next night, the bank system never catches up. To the fact that the money doesn't actually exist, it's basically a massive digital game of kick the can. And Dan decides to kick that can as hard as he possibly can. Dan hits the ATM every single night. In just the first 2 weeks, he pulls out $20,000. Every morning, Dan expects the cops to kick his door down. He even goes into the bank in person to see if his accounts are flagged, but the teller just smiles at him. Nobody knows a thing. Through sheer volume of nightly withdrawals, Dan literally becomes a millionaire, and he starts living like one. He eats at 5-star restaurants, he stays in a 2009 penthouse suite, he even charters a 20-seat private jet for $90,000 to fly his friends out to an exotic island for the weekend. When people ask him how a bartender suddenly has a private jet money, he just lies. He tells them he's an investment banker or a poker pro, and because he's paying for everything, no one asks questions. They just enjoy it, you know? But Dan wasn't just selfish. He paid off his friend's university tuition, he tipped waiters hundreds of dollars, he even rent out luxury hotel rooms just to let homeless people sleep in a warm bed for the night. For a few months, he's living like a GTA character with a cheat code. But here's the human side of the story. Dan Saunders was not a criminal mastermind. He was just a normal guy, and the psychological toll and stealing over $1 million started eating him alive. Money does not buy peace of mind. In fact, it bought Dan severe panic attacks. He stopped sleeping. He had vivid nightmares about SWAT teams raiding his mom's home. Every time his phone rang, his stomach dropped. He's like living in terror, thinking it was the police. He knew he could take the millions and flee to a non-extradition country, but he could not bear the thought of never seeing his family again. Finally, after 4 months of exploiting the glitch and spending $1.6 million, Dan reaches his breaking point and he stops going to the ATM. And in May of 2011, honest Dan picks up the phone, calls the National Australia Bank, and confesses to everything. The bank is stunned. They tell him it's out of their hands now, it's a police matter, and he is going to be in a massive trouble. Dan hangs up, packs a bag for prison, and waits and he waits and keeps waiting. Guys, 3 full years go by and it is now 2014 and the police have never contacted him. Most people would just thank their lucky stars and move on. But Dan's guilt is so heavy, he literally starts seeing a psychiatrist to cope with the fact that he didn't get arrested. His therapist suggests he turn himself in. But Dan has a better idea. He goes to the media, he goes to a national Australian television, sits down for interviews, and he tells them the entire story. And tell people how exactly he stole $1.6 million, and even then, the cops don't arrest him. It wasn't until a producer from the TV show actually called the police and a low-key ratted him out. The authorities finally moved in, and it turns out the bank had never actually reported him. If Dan hadn't gone on national TV begging to be caught, he would have gotten away with it forever. Dan is finally arrested and taken to the court, but the trial is a complete mess. The prosecutor does not understand the glitch, the judge doesn't understand it, and even the bank's own IT experts cannot fully explain to the court how Dan tricked their system. And because the bank couldn't explain the mechanics of the theft, the judge couldn't throw the book at him. Dan pleaded guilty to theft and fraud, and his sentence was a 1 single year in prison and 18 months of community service. He served his time, came out a free man, and went right back to working in a bar. A year in jail for spending $1.6 million like a king. So I gotta ask you, if you found an ATM that was spitting out free money at 1 a.m., would you have stopped, or would you have kept kicking the can also like Dan? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you want more crazy stories like this, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and I'll see you on the next one.